Hello, my friend, and welcome to the last episode of the Red Delta Project podcast for 2019. Yes, today as I'm recording this is New Year's Eve. 2020 is coming down at us like a runaway freight train, so I wanted to take these last few minutes in 2019 and look back on this year, which has been one hell of a banner year for Red Delta Project. Not only was it the 10-year anniversary of R.D.P, because it started in 2009, but this year has seen far more growth, improvement, and breakthroughs than in the 9 years previous to this combined. So I wanted to look today at some of those breakthroughs and big lessons and takeaways of the year, and then leave off with some of the new things that I'm working on that are going to take things even to a much higher level for you for 2020. So the first thing that happened in 2019 was I finally accomplished something that I've been trying to do for the past 9 years, which was to create a name and a brand and a definition for my unique style of bodyweight training. This is extremely important for me to do because I've always known that my approach to bodyweight training has been left of center from the normal perception of what bodyweight training and calisthenics is. Back 10 years ago, when I started doing things based on like the convict conditioning methods and stuff, I would tell people, oh, I do calisthenics training, and they're like, so you gave up the heavy bench press to do like 1,000 push-ups a day? Like, that doesn't make sense, and you do like jumping jacks and 1,000,000 crunches and stuff. I'm like, no, nothing at all like that. That's not at all what I'm doing. And even nowadays, when I tell people I do things like calisthenics, they're like, so you do planches and front levers and acrobatics and sport and muscle ups and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't do any of that stuff either. And that's because I've always looked at bodyweight training as a means to an end, not to do any of that stuff that looks great on social media, but instead to have a different objective. And the first thing I needed to do was create a name for that, and then define the objective, and then define the process to have that occur. So the first thing I did was I finally came up with a decent name, which you now know, of course, as Grind Style Calisthenics, which was the first step. Because once you have a name, then you've got the ability to say, this is what we do, now we gotta figure out how we do it. So Grind Style Calisthenics was a term I coined in a podcast episode much like this back in early January, and once I had that name, I was like, good. Now I've got a needle that I can follow, a true north that I can base all of my projects and information off of from this point forth. Only took me 9 years to figure that out, right? So once I had that, then I had to be like, well, why grind style? Like, what is the objective? And then what I was able to do was figure out the point of grind style calisthenics isn't to bring numbers up. It's not to be able to do one-arm push-ups or backflips and all this stuff that looks great on social media. Instead, the objective with grind style calisthenics is to achieve the same experience and physical stimulus that you would get from weightlifting in a gym, bodybuilding style, particularly like weight machines, free weight exercises and stuff. The exact same physical stimulus, but with the freedom, independence, and efficiency of calisthenics training. All right, so we got a name and we've got a purpose behind it. Now we need a method behind it to be clearly defined. And at the time, I realized that there are 3 primary disciplines that make up grind style calisthenics. The first of which is the foundation of progressive calisthenics movements. And this is, of course, based off of convict conditioning and the PCC methods, where we adjust the difficulty of basic movement patterns through advanced technique. The second discipline of grind style calisthenics is weighted calisthenics. So instead of adding resistance and difficulty through advanced techniques, now you're literally adding weight to the body in order to progress basic techniques. And the 3 primary weighted exercises in grind style calisthenics are weighted dips, weighted pull-ups, and weighted lunges. So those of you who are from the beginning of R.D.P recognize that as the triad muscle revolution, because those are the 3 basic movement patterns. So that's legs, push, and pull. So that's the majority of your muscles that are responsible for most of your strength and muscle mass. Those are the easiest exercises to load, because you don't even need physical like weights from a gym. You can do that with rocks. I've done it with like backpacks, any sort of objects that you can find. And they're the easiest to load as far as load on the physical body. For the pull-ups and dips, you just have like a rope or some sort of a belt or something that you can hang weight off of, and you can just hold something in your arms while you're doing lunges, because you don't need nearly as much weight for weighted lunges as you do with things like back squats. So it's a much more efficient and easier on the joint approach for adding load to the body. And then the third discipline of grind style calisthenics is suspension training. And the suspension trainer is like a portable gym, of course, as you know, that you can take anywhere, but it also helps you to simulate a lot of the weight machines and isolated movements that you would find in the bodybuilding culture, like curls, tricep extensions, hamstring curls, chest flies, and so on. So that right there was huge for R.D.P and what I've been trying to do, because it gives us clarity on what we're trying to accomplish with our training methods. And all the information from here on out is based on grind style calisthenics, being able to simulate weightlifting stimulus with calisthenics movements, and using progressive calisthenics, weighted calisthenics, and suspension training to make that happen. Then, to celebrate that, I came out with my fourth book, which was Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts. And this is true to form. Every book I've ever written starts off the same way, by people asking me for information, saying you should write a book on X or Y or Z, and immediately, almost always, I always think, nope, can't be done. It's impossible. Or I think to myself, well, there's no point in writing a book, just do the normal thing, just do these push-ups, just do these progressive pull-ups and stuff, and that'll carry over to the martial arts just perfect. But after the initial refusal to write the book, I always start thinking about it in my mind. I'm like, actually, I wouldn't do that if I was trying to condition myself as a martial artist, because I've been doing Taekwondo most of my life, and I thought you need a lot more than just basic strength for appropriate conditioning for martial arts. You just can't build big biceps and expect yourself to be a good martial artist, because there's a lot of different capabilities that go into martial arts, especially if you're into MMA, where you need to have a lot of different proficiency in different martial arts, different styles. So I started to think about it and do some more homework, and I was like, well, you need to have progressive strength, so that progressive calisthenics is at the corner, at the center of everything. You need to have a range of capability in a range of speed. And that was very key, because you can't just be strong in one speed. You have to have very fast power and explosive strength, but you also need to have very still isometric strength. So I added that into the program. Plus, you need a lot of strength in various positions. So you need a lot of stability in your joints, because we don't move in very robotic fashions in martial arts. It's much more fluid and dynamic. So that's when I created the functional triad that I put into the book, Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts. At the center, progressive strength training. The bottom is the spectrum of speed, so you have explosive power and you also have isometric strength. And at the top, you also have the foundation of stability and shifting strength, so you're strong in a variety of positions. So that was a big breakthrough for me, at least, to figure out that you need to have a range of capabilities if you want to keep improving and progressing. So that came out. Great reviews about it, very happy with that book. Things are off and rolling. Around that time, I moved back to Colorado because things were changing again in my life, and it's been a year of a lot of instability and kind of stressful here from a personal standpoint. So when I was moving back to Colorado, things were all up in the air, and I started to really struggle a lot with being able to have consistent and reliably good quality workouts. It was a very good lesson for me to recognize that, sometimes life is just going completely off the rails. And when that happens, it's really hard to still maintain good habits despite your best efforts. So for me personally, I was just trying to get through my workouts as best as I possibly could. But I was starting to notice that the methods of the functional triad from Bodyweight Training for Martial Arts were starting to have more of a positive influence on how good my workouts were, the quality of them, the mental focus, because I was putting in the isometrics, I was putting in the shifting control. I was basically priming my body in a unique way during the warm-ups for my workouts. And I started to think, well, why do shifting push-ups improve the quality of my dips? Why does holding an isometric lunge make my legs stronger and my joints less achy during things like pistol squats. So I started to look into that a little bit more, and at the same time I was also getting questions and requests for a book on grind style calisthenics. People again were saying, can you write a book? Can you give us some sort of like a manifesto for the grind style calisthenics method? At which point, again, I was like, no, it's impossible. There's no point. Just watch the YouTube videos and stuff. But as I was struggling with my workouts, and as I was discovering how the functional triad was improving my own personal workouts, I started to realize that there was a particular program that I was starting to develop. What I started to understand was that the ability to use your muscle goes in a hierarchical order. So if you want to build muscle, you have to build strength first. And if you want to be stronger, you have to be more stable, because you cannot apply force into a muscle in an unstable environment. And stability is largely the result of how well you can control the tension in your muscles. So that's when I started to understand and realize the neuromuscular hierarchy that I created, where you have tension control, stability, strength, and then hypertrophy built up in that order. And if one level is weaker, then all of the other levels above it simply cannot be developed. So when I started to understand that, I realized this is a program. This is an approach to calisthenics training that we can use in a systematic way to build up the body in a much faster, safer, and more reliable way. This is going to be the foundation to grind style calisthenics. I also was starting to learn about the backfilling strategy based on separate repetitions, and I also had created my grind straps, which is this very simple DIY, very efficient suspension trainer that I invented as well. So I'm like, all right, neuromuscular hierarchy, we've got the backfilling strategy, and we've got grind straps. This is what's going to go into book number 5, which of course was my book, Grind Style Calisthenics, which has been absolutely fantastic, by far the best book I've written, and really helped to calcify and clarify what grind style calisthenics is and the approach that we can use for reliable results in building muscle and strength. It's also the first book that I've written specifically using bodyweight training for building raw muscle and strength. It's not just calisthenics in general or calisthenics for a particular approach. This is, if you came to me and you said, I want to use calisthenics, but I just want to focus on building muscle and strength, that's by far the most efficient and effective method that I could possibly come up with. So now things are really running like crazy, because we've got clarity on grind style calisthenics, what its objective is, and how we accomplish it, and we've got the neuromuscular hierarchy in order to put that into a particular workout program. Things are really going great, and I'm feeling really good about things, but there's still something that's missing. Because one of the things about the neuromuscular hierarchy is it's effective for building something that I needed to coin, again, a term on. We needed to identify and be like, what is the objective here? And that was the next big breakthrough that I had for R.D.P, which was understanding this term that I now call neuromuscular proficiency. Neuromuscular proficiency is essentially how well you can use your own body. It's how good your tension control is, and your stability, and your strength, and your neuromuscular endurance. It's all of these things, all of these qualities in one cohesive unit. Basically, that's the magic ingredient in an effective workout. If you improve your neuromuscular proficiency, your workouts are more effective regardless of any other variables. High volume, low volume, calisthenics, weightlifting, high intensity. You can do any type of training. And as long as you're improving your neuromuscular proficiency, you're getting results. However, if your neuromuscular proficiency isn't very good, you can change your training style and your workout 20 ways from here till Sunday. It's never going to be very effective, regardless of the method you use or the scientific reason behind those methods. So that gave me a whole new mission for the latter part of 2019 of, I need to make this my primary goal. Is understanding neuromuscular proficiency and what's the best way to improve it. Now, the neuromuscular hierarchy in grind style calisthenics program is a very good way to improve neuromuscular proficiency. But I was feeling like there had to be a better way to go about it, because one of the biggest challenges of neuromuscular proficiency is trying to teach it and trying to advance and progress it in a very reliable way. And that neuromuscular hierarchy works pretty well, but it was kind of a hit or miss approach. And for some people it would work faster, and some people it would work a lot slower, and it wasn't good enough, in my opinion. And that's when the next big breakthrough came through, when Dragon Door started to announce that they were starting to develop a new product that's coming out in 2020 called the ISO chain, which uses a discipline called overcoming isometrics. And I started to look into it a little bit, and I thought, well, I don't want to wait for the ISO chain. I'm going to start to play around with it for myself. And holy mother of hell, that made things happen really fast. Because as soon as I started using those overcoming isometrics, I noticed that my neuromuscular proficiency improved by leaps and bounds far faster than some of the other methods that I was using. Plus, it gave my mind something that I could focus on to improve my neuromuscular tension control, stability, strength, and endurance all at the same time. So that became the fourth discipline of grind style calisthenics. So now we've got progressive calisthenics, weighted calisthenics, suspension training, and now overcoming isometrics all together into your grind style method. So that brings us up to the present day. It's been a hell of a year in getting clarity, focus, and a systematized approach to bodyweight training for building muscle and strength and how we're going about it. So what's coming down the pipe for 2020? Well, there's a number of things. One is the new book I'm working on, Overcoming Isometrics for Building Muscle and Strength, which is much more than just a collection of overcoming isometric exercises, but it's actually a collection of a lot of different things that is getting more down to the base foundation of what makes your workouts and approach to fitness more effective. I've got another book that's coming out, which technically isn't entirely my book, but it is one that I've written. Is early 2020, there's a publishing house that asked me to write a book for them based on calisthenics training for beginners. So the book is largely written. We're just getting things finished up. That should be coming out in April. I'm working on a new DIY project for a new piece of equipment, which is a suspension trainer, isometric trainer combination unit. Some of you may have seen the ISO trainer that I did a review on from WorldFit, which is fantastic. But I'm developing my own DIY project, which is going to take that and basically improve and enhance it for not only overcoming isometric training, but also all forms of bodyweight training. So it's basically it's Grind Straps 2.0, if you will. And then finally is the official release of the Grind Style Calisthenics training program and app that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, early 2020 here. And this is a big thing that I've long wanted to do, because as great as videos like this are and books are and stuff, those types of information are kind of like you consume them and you just kind of put them away. The book sits on the shelf and this kind of just fades into the background of the internet. Whereas something that is an app, which gives you daily instruction and workouts and motivation and tips, is evergreen. Something that I can use to constantly give you more value and information on a daily basis that never gets old and it never gets outdated. So that's been a very big project that I've been working on for the past couple of months, and I'm very excited to be releasing that. That should be out in the first few weeks of 2020. In fact, depending on when you're listening to this, it may already be out. It's coming out on Android and iOS. So in conclusion, thank you very much for all of your support this entire year. I sincerely would not have been able to do any of this without your continued support, watching the videos, listening to the podcast, buying my books. It's greatly appreciated, and I promise you 2020 is going to be absolutely incredible. So thank you very much. Happy New Year, and here's to a stronger 2020. Be fit, live free.